You ever think about this? Like abstract loss of life? But like in the abstract sense, right? I talked about COVID earlier on the show, and I talk about it quite frequently. I talk about diet, I talk about exercise, I talk about nutrition, and how like our society is constructed in a way that kind of just obfuscates how people die, when they die, etc. But one thing that I do not talk about on my show enough, but I do have a personal fascination with, is cars. Cars are garbage. Roads are garbage. Constructing our society around the need for the car, not only are roads disastrous for the environment, not only are cars disastrous for the climate, not only are they, what if you're disabled and you can't drive a car? Well, then you can't really get a job anywhere that you can't walk. And what if you can't walk, right? So, but anyway, I got this article here that talks about another way that cars are really bad for us. They kill so many fucking people. U.S. traffic deaths jumped in early 2022, hitting a 20-year high. We as a society have decided that, oh, I want to be able to drive to goddamn 80 mph. Do you know how many people have to die for your right to drive at 80 miles per hour on the fucking interstate? Do you know how many people have to die for your right to drive at 60 miles per hour? At a fucking, in a downtown neighborhood kind of situation. You know how many people need to die every time there is a correlation? Every time that the speed limit is increased, there's a percentage jump in traffic accidents that lead to fatal injuries and death. So, isn't that interesting? And we as a society, we have blinders on. We don't care. Like, talk to anyone in your life. Have they ever, I mean, I'm just serious. Ask your mom, ask your dad, ask your cousin, ask your brother, whatever. Have you ever thought about the idea that every time you get into a car, you can die, and that just the idea that we have cars in our society requires there to be tens of thousands of people that have to die? It's a human sacrifice. This is what this is. It's as stupid. Think about this. Ask your friend, ask your fucking mother, your brother, whatever, how they feel about the human sacrifices of the Mayan civilization, throwing people into volcanoes, stabbing them with spears, letting their blood drain down the pyramids. Think about that. Oh, they're savages, right? Oh, they were uncivilized, brutal savages. Were they really? Think about the people that would burn witches. Oh, they were brutal savages. They're telling me you burned someone alive because, you thought they were a witch? What? That's crazy. Utter insanity savages, right? And then ask them about the car thing when they jump in their car. And that tens of thousands of people die for their right to jump in their car. Oh, it's no, but it's in and then I need to go, and then motherfuckers that were fucking stabbing people and then their blood drained down the pyramids. They thought they were sacrificing people for God to like give them rain. At least people that were burning witches at the stake, they thought, holy fuck, we got witches here. They're gonna kill us all. Let's burn them at the stake. Right? They had better reasons than, in my opinion, that we have with cars. I mean, we could talk about capitalism in the abstract and the human sacrifice that is required to keep this fucking shitty fucking goddamn global economic fucking system in place, right? Throwing more dead bodies into the furnace like coal in a fucking train in 1886, right? But cars. I have a special fascination with my hatred for cars. More than 9,500 people were killed in traffic accidents in the first 3 months of this year. 3 months, 10,000 people dying. Where's the outrage? I sincerely ask the normies in your life, have you ever thought about the annual death toll that is required to keep the system of transport known as cars alive in this country. Why are cars so popular? Because of freedom. I get to go to the goddamn burger shop with my girlfriend when I'm 16, and then we got freedom. My dad let me borrow the car. It's goddamn, and he didn't know I took it. Right? Like, the reason why cars are required to live in a lot of places in this country, you have to have cars. Right? Why? It's because 100 years ago, car companies, look at Henry Ford. By the way, Henry Ford was a Nazi. I don't know if anyone knew that, but he was a devout Nazi during the 1930s. Anyway, aside from that, these car companies, basically, they just bought out the government. They lobbied the government and they said, yo, these cars are going to change the world. Yeah, we know they're killing a lot of people, but hear me out. We're going to build roads. We're going to build interstates. Remember Truman came along and was like, all right, the interstates, you're going to be able to drive from New York to goddamn San Francisco and goddamn interstate. Right? And so once interstates became a thing, all the money poured into that, then cars weaseled their way into being a necessity. Before the cars really hooked into American culture in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, right? Before that happened, trains were extremely popular, right? But again, cars, the fucking thing with cars that really is just baffling to me is we have better alternatives. Buses, trains, trams. You could have those fucking, in Japan, they've got those monorail, bullet train things that are in the sky, they have these big towers and they go woo, all around the city. Wouldn't that be fucking cool as hell? I don't know. What about bikes, bro? What the fuck? Anyway, cars. Why are cars so fucking big? Most people, when they drive a car, they drive it by themselves. Why the fuck are cars so fucking big? Why are cars... Don't even get me started with SUVs and trucks. Why are cars so fucking big when most people driving them are only one person? You ever watch Dragon Ball? Dragon Ball, how they have those little fucking hoi poi capsules? Y'all know what the weebs in my chat know what's up, right? And when Bulma's getting her fucking cars and they're the small, one-seater? Why don't we have that? That's a cartoon in the 1980s, and they had a better idea than we have in 2022. Where the fuck are our small one-person-sized cars? Why are cars so fucking big and wasteful? I don't know, man. I could talk about cars forever. Anyway, let's keep going. 7 states and the district, a figure that represents the deadliest start to a year on U.S. roads in 2 decades. In 7 states and the district, the district, by the way, that means Washington, D.C., but I love the district. Officials estimated crash deaths jumped at least 50%. Nationwide, deaths were up 7% compared to the same period last year. The figures are preliminary estimates, and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration did not release breakdowns of the causes of crashes. Officials say a surge in traffic fatalities that started in 2020 as the pandemic began has continued unabated. There was another article I read that talked about how alcoholism is increasing in popularity since the pandemic began. Alcoholism has skyrocketed. Now, funnily enough, alcoholism has skyrocketed at higher percentages in states where things like marijuana are illegal. Isn't that interesting? And in those states, more people are dying of alcohol-related injuries, a lot of them being in cars, than in states where marijuana is legal. Isn't that interesting? Just throwing that out there. A little food for thought. The overall numbers are still moving in the wrong direction, said Stephen Cliff, the head of NHTSA. Now is the time for all states to double down on traffic safety. Experts have struggled to come up with an explanation for the spike in deaths, but have pointed to less congestion amid changing driving patterns during the pandemic, which they say have allowed more dangerous speeds. Officials say there's also evidence of an uptick in reckless behavior, such as driving impaired or without wearing a seatbelt. Another thing about cars that really pisses me the fuck off about these highways, you ever look at New York City? I've never been there, but I've read a lot of interesting studies. You ever look at photographs of New York City in the 1950s and 60s and then compare them to photographs of New York City from today or tomorrow or yesterday? Well, if you do, and if you do these things in certain areas of New York City, you'll notice that huge swaths of New York City have been completely destroyed. Tens of thousands of people, predominantly black people, wouldn't that be interesting? Black people had their houses destroyed by the government of New York City, right? By the mayoral administrations of the 1970s, 80s, etc. Black people were displaced, right? This is a little thing that they would do, is they would go into black neighborhoods, the guys in charge of the parks department. They would go knock on people's doors, right? They would look for anything that they could that was a good excuse in order to classify their home as condemned, right? And once you classify a home as condemned, now the government has the power of eminent domain. They can steal your fucking shit whenever they want, right? But they have to pay you. They have to pay you when they steal your shit, right? You know, gotta be fair. But they would have people that work for the parks department go all over these black neighborhoods, knock on the doors, say hello, you know, count their homes as condemned. And once they're condemned, they're a lot cheaper. They're a lot cheaper when the house is condemned. So the government will spend a fraction of the cost that these homes are actually worth, that the land is actually worth, displace a bunch of black people, give them no money to be able to afford a new home. And people wonder, right? Oh, the effects of slavery were so long ago, right? Imagine your fucking family. I know, we're still talking about cars, but bear with me here. Now, imagine your fucking family escaped fucking slavery, right? Like, imagine you're an escaped fucking slave. You're a freed slave. You have a family, right? You know, over the course of 2 or 3 generations, your fucking family's able to buy a house in New York fucking City. Holy shit, the dream. The American fucking dream. My grandma was a slave, and now I own a home in New York City. And then some fat fuck cigar-smoking white guy comes to your house, calls your house condemned, gives you $20 for it, bulldozes it for a shitty fucking highway. Imagine how those people are fucking feeling. Isn't that crazy shit? Isn't that fucking crazy shit? Well, that's cars for you. That's the legacy of fucking cars in this fucking country. Let's keep going. When everyday life came to a halt in March 2020, risky behavior skyrocketed and traffic fatalities spiked, Cliff said. We had hoped these trends were limited to 2020, but sadly, they aren't. NHTSA reported 7,893 traffic deaths in the first 3 months of 2020, a period mostly before the onset of the pandemic. In 2021, the figure jumped to 8,935 deaths. I'm assuming that still means the first 3 months. Then rose to 9,560 this year. The number of deaths this year was the highest in the first 3 months of a year since 2002. The first quarter is consistently the least deadly on U.S. roads. There's more deaths, of course, during the fourth quarter because holidays. Gotta go visit Mama. She's making turkey. Woo! Cranberries. Not to be confused with the Irish band. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg earlier this year said the nation would work to eliminate crash deaths. This is like Joe Biden saying, we're going to cure cancer. We're going to cure cancer. My name is Joe Biden. I'm now finally the president, and I just wanted to say one of my dreams is to find the cure for cancer. This is Pete Buttigieg's version. We're going to stop all traffic fatalities. We're going to do it, folks. I don't know how it's going to be done. I don't know if it's even possible, but we are going to do it, folks. Pledging to adopt a safe system approach that would look at much of the design. This article is written like shit. Look at much of the design of roads and cars as the behavior of individual drivers. Unless I'm stupid, would look as much at the design. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm dyslexic, and, please bear with me. The effort is backed by billions in new safety funding from last year's infrastructure law, including $5 billion fund that will provide grants aimed at protecting bicyclists and pedestrians. Now, again, this is like putting a Band-Aid on, like, a gunshot wound. Oh, we're going to, like, expand the distance between the road and the bike lane. Great. What about the fucking interstate pileups. I don't know, man. Anyway, I could talk about cars for a long time. I could read the rest of this article, but I think I've made my point. Someone in the chat earlier said something I want to respond to while I'm doing this segment. Let me find this chat message. Goddamn fucking... What's your name? Applebee's? Appleberry? This logic could be applied to almost everything in society. I agree. Thousands of people die from alcohol every year as well. Alcohol is a bad example because it's self-inflicted. But I agree we can attach this to everything in society. We can attach it to global capitalism. The idea that I'm able to have this cell phone, the idea that I'm able to do a stream on this computer, that you're watching on this computer, that we are connected via the internet, is only possible because of slavery overseas. Slavery in South America, slavery in Africa, slavery in Asia, right? Slavery here in the United States in some instances, right? With prison labor, right? So the only reason that we're able to live in this kind of society as we are right now is because of global slavery. So yeah, and I think that we should restructure our society to eliminate these kinds of evils. But alcohol is a bad example because it's self-inflicted. I think people have a right to kill themselves in the same way that I think people have a right to eat themselves to death. 93% of this country, citizens, 93% of this country has a form of metabolic syndrome, which is essentially pre-diabetes. I believe people have a right to kill themselves with food. But my opinion on this one would be knowledge. Most people don't know that they have metabolic syndrome. Most people don't know that the food that they're eating is poisoned. Most people don't know the extent of the damage that Wendy's does to you if you eat that, right? So my opinion, my solution to self-inflicted things such as nutrition or drugs would be a safety campaign. That's my opinion. A safety campaign so that people are educated significantly more in these instances. People, again, a lot of people turn to drugs, I almost said drugs and alcohol, but alcohol is a drug, and that phrase is stupid. Most people turn to drugs because, again, mental health crises. If we expanded coverage for mental health in this country, less people would do less reckless things on drugs, right? So that's a lot of things that we need to talk about. But I think alcohol is a bad example. But overall, yes, capitalism is a death cult. Capitalism is a murder industry. It's an industry based on killing as many people as possible for the benefit of as few people as possible. So yeah, I'm absolutely, cars are just one example. Anyway, it's a 20-minute segment on